So hi, everybody. I was just discussing earlier that it's very nice to be at the Benelux conference. In the past, I used to go to Utrecht quite often. We had a modernization day there once for mobile. We had a forms modernization day. So there's a lot of great partners, and I wish I was there in Benelux with everybody. But today we're going to really discuss, as we mentioned, what is robotic process automation? What is this new area of IT? And why and if we should care? Oh, is that Bell mean there's a chat? No. Okay, good.
No, it's because apparently it looks like you connected again, so that's okay.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Mia Urman, and I'm the CEO of a company called Oraplayer. As mentioned, I've been in the Oracle world way too long, way longer than a lady would like to admit, right? I worked for Oracle in 1998, right out of college, doing phone support. If you guys remember phone support, helping people modernize from Forms 3.0 on upwards. And then my career basically expanded to other Oracle tools. I've been involved with ADF, with Apex, with mobile cloud, with digital assistants, integration, etc., etc. And now I really feel like the next big way of taking the legacy applications of forms of e-business suite of things that are kind of stuck on the desktop is by utilizing these types of automations to bring them into the next generation. So Oraplayer itself is a company that was born to really modernize legacy investments from the beginning. We're a patented solution. We've won several awards, and we have a big group of customers all over the world, including, I think, Sony DAC, which is in your region. But we're really going to dive in and begin with, what is robotic process automation? A lot of times people hear the word robot and they think of it like the vacuum cleaner, right? There's a robot vacuum cleaner. You put it on the ground. It automatically goes around the room, hits all the walls, and the little robot cleans up. But when we talk about robotic process automation, we're not really talking about a robot itself, but we're really talking about a piece of software that could easily be programmed to do basic tasks the same way that humans do. So basically, it's a repetitive task that is conducted on top of the screen, on top of the application itself. And it is a set of tasks that are conducted on top of the screen the same way that a human interacts with a computer software program. So it's basically designed to reduce the amount of repetitive, simple tasks, but it still could be interacting with a different set of rules or a different set of triggers or business logic that could be interspersed as well. So why do we actually care about this whole robotic software automation world? As mentioned, the RPA market size was 1.557 billion in 2020. Okay, so this is an incredibly humongous growth area. It's growing by 35% every year. There's tons of companies that say they do RPA, including UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, Nest, Pegasystems. I mean, you could throw a rock and hit a company, including ones that used to do, SOA or API management, because it is similar in the sense that it is able to do and perform a business function without an end user. The difference is that the APIs actually carry out the functions on the back end only. So an API goes directly to the database layer or to a service layer, but it does not interact with the front end client. The RPA itself actually creates a session, usually with a canvas, and has the user interaction automated on that. So that's the big difference between the APIs versus RPA. And like we said, RPA itself was born from the fact that, you know, IT is unbelievably understaffed, right? To have people to do data entry, you see a lot of people are shifting their application, data entry, etc., offshore, because there's just not enough people who are going to be able to do all of the business processing that's going to be needed as time goes on, right? Not only in that sense, but also in the sense that, you know, we have now the ability of taking people from being simple data entry employees, but lifting them up to a higher level, right? If we were able to do automation for the lowest level of data entry, we could prevent human errors from copying and pasting. We could reduce labor from repetitive tasks. We could increase employee satisfaction because people are not bored to death by typing in, for example, inventory items from a price list that they've received. You know, human beings are then able to shift their focus from these boring, repetitive tasks to higher level tasks that actually require thought. And in doing this, we will actually get, you know, more efficiency, less data errors, and bigger cost savings. So if we say that a robot is not the robot in the traditional sense of the word, so what is this bot? Like we said, the bot is a software-based application, and that bot contains the rules, parameters, and procedures that will be automated. So essentially, you will create a process flow. That process flow will be the business functions that you'd like to automate. And then the bot is the actual automation at runtime that's going to be conducted on the back office application. So you could create, for instance, a process flow that will receive an email from a vendor. It will see that there's an attachment of Excel, and in the subject line, it says price list. It will automatically download that Excel file and parse that file into a bot that will essentially insert that data directly into the EBS inventory management system. For rows where they're unsuccessfully inserted, it'll send an email. And for the ones that are successfully inserted, at the end of reading all the lines of the file, it'll send an email. So that would be considered the process flow. And a bot would be that we're scheduling a bot to run on a trigger that every time the email is received, it will fire. Or it could be every time a file is saved to a folder, or it could be every Monday at 2 p.m. It'll read all the files in a folder. So you could essentially save Excel files to a folder. You know, all of these ways enable the bots to have a single business flow, a single bot created, but different ways to trigger the bot. So in terms of RPA, for robotic process automation, there are essentially three types of this automation. The first one is called attended automation. Basically, it means that there has to be a human involved in the process, and the bot is configured to work together with the human. These bots are primarily if you need to get some sort of data from the end user, an approval from the end user, or you need some sort of human interaction between the bot and the business flow from a front office worker. Unattended automation means the bot is trained from start to finish and can run without any human interaction whatsoever. So the example we gave previously, where an email is received, the Excel file is parsed for the items are automatically entered, and an email is received. That is an unattended automation because all of the items will be inserted into the EBS backend. A similar attended automation could be that the email is received, the Excel is parsed, and data is inputted. However, before it saves each row, it will pop up the record to be saved. It will show the end user the data and the item description and pricing, and the end user will click approve in order for those rows to be entered into the back office system. So essentially, it's the same type of business flow, but attended requires that level of validation. Cognitive automation is based on unstructured data. And basically, that should be able to take any type of data format. So for instance, if we would take the same example that we're talking about, if I wanted to do a web crawler and basically say to my bot, go to these 3 websites, right? Amazon, Target, and Walmart, find items, find Nike sneakers, find the average price, and then insert it into EBS, right? So basically what it would need to do is it would need to parse the unstructured data. It would need to go into either websites or images or things of that nature to be able to understand what it's looking at, to derive from that the data needed, and then to insert that as part of the process automation. Okay, so if we're going to drill down once again, the attended automation, it's kind of easy to remember because it's attended, right? Somebody's attending to it. The RPA tools extract the information from the system, but it prepares it for consumption by the worker. So we have an attended automation for a call center that we did. Basically what it does, it takes information from the Oracle form system as well as from the Microsoft CRM system, and then it pulls up when the customer calls in, you could see the billing information from forms as well as the CRM information. So the call center worker has everything they need in front of their face to be able to answer questions, okay? We use this when it's not possible to automate the entire end-to-end process, and it's basically triggered by system level events to enable the customer to work alongside the bot, okay? The attended automation needs to be very user-friendly because a staff member has to be able to interact with the bot. It needs to have some sort of interface or screen so that the end user could interact and basically have a dialogue with the bot. A lot of these types of RPAs use chatbots in order to facilitate that. So Oracle has a big push now to use digital assistants and chatbots. And allows for very complex automations, user intervention or a decision point, and it will allow the bots to kind of split off. When you get data, you can make decisions based on that data, how to move forward, right? You could decide if it's a customer that should get automatically approved, or it should go to a manager and things of that nature. Unattended RPA, as we said, it focuses on straight end-to-end tasks. The RPA bots work with no human intervention or very little. It could be self-triggered, so it could be scheduled on a certain day, on a certain time, or it could be triggered by automated processes. So it could be triggered by a file being saved into a folder. It could be triggered by an email being received, or things of that nature. And a lot of people are really excited about this whole prospect of unattended RPA, because essentially you could have a digital worker working 24/7, 365 days a week in this batch mode. One example of what we did with unattended RPA, we have a customer who is having lots of complaints from their end user, that their users were getting locked in Oracle database. Okay, they were getting locked and stuck users. And until the DBA freed up to be able to service their request, it took a really long time and it was really cumbersome. So what they essentially did was they had an email chatbot called Shayna, and they did it that people could email the bot and say their name, and it would automatically trigger this bot to connect to the username in the Oracle system and kill the database user, unstick the database user. So it essentially allowed for a virtual DBA 24/7. They also added now to change password, that people could change their password automatically with the digital bot, and they could do other small end user related tasks that the DBA has now freed up, 60% of his time when he used to deal with a lot of these end user queries. So unattended bots, like we said, they could be remotely accessed through different platforms. They could be directly integrated into API platforms, into orchestration platforms. And basically the beauty of it is that you do not need to write an API. Okay, this actually runs the business logic on top of the front end of the application. So if there's no existing API, you don't have to worry. You can essentially use the bot in order to create that automation. Cognitive automation is really going to be the future of RPA. Already people are talking about it in terms of medical processes and things of that nature. This is going to use more advanced technologies like natural language processing, data mining, machine learning, and hopefully allow for businesses to make more informed decisions based on historical data, or learn from massive amounts of historical passive data as well. A big example is doctors beginning to leverage this cognitive automation. So we actually had a really cool thing that was similar. Basically, in our healthcare act, there was something that said it was for skin, like a consult from a skin doctor bot. And basically you can take a picture of a mole, upload the photo, describe, right, shape, color, where it's found, etc. And they would let you know if you had to see a doctor about it or not. So this type of example, if you can imagine how much time and money it frees up for these healthcare companies where everybody's going to see skin doctors for every single little thing. It's really a really quick way of doing triage, or the first level of diagnosis. And this really should hopefully be the first level of the future of RPA, to allow people to save time and money with this ability, right? So what is a good candidate for RPA? What should we be automating, right? So basically anything that is a tedious, time-consuming task. I always begin with the data entry tasks. Okay, for Oracle eBusiness Suite, there is so much data entry. There are so many places where people print out Excel files, write manually by hand in the Excel files, then type the Excel data back into the application, where people are comparing invoices, receipts, versus purchase orders. All of these types of human integrations, right? Manual integration, where you copy data from one interface, paste into another interface to do some sort of search. And any type of manual task with limited variability. So if every month you get the new pricing list and you have to input it from an Excel file, etc., all of these are candidates that really could potentially benefit from RPA. Things that we don't usually put as automation are things that are kind of one-off tasks, are things that are sometimes unpredictable or very dynamic. So in Oracle E-Business Suite, a lot of the business processes happen to be extremely dynamic based on the preferences, the privileges, the roles of the person who log in. So if there's not a way of standardizing the process across the board, across users, that's not going to be something that's so suitable for automation, of course. Things that are complex with approvals, right? So if there's some sort of automation or where you have to send things between several people, you know, and it's highly attended or automated, that's also sometimes a good time to skip it. But like we said, the three main benefits of the RPA world is that we can automate the workers. Again, we're not talking about putting the workers out to pasture, but essentially moving the processes from data entry, data manipulation, and manual validations, so that they can focus on, you know, the value-added tasks, reducing human errors, and the main one for us as Oracle application users is really to be able to leverage the existing infrastructure. You could run RPA on legacy Oracle Forms, on JD Edwards, on PeopleSoft, on Oracle E-Business Suite, literally on any of the platforms, whether they're on cloud or whether they're on premise. It interfaces with the front end, so it does not need a next generation user interface to be able to do the automations. So it's that opportunity to really get automation without needing to migrate or redevelop the front ends that is a really big plus for Oracle users. The big challenges with RPA is a lot of times that people confuse the need to do a small automation in RPA with the need to, you know, automate the entire business, right? Biting off more than we can chew. What we try to do for RPA is really to start with a low-hanging fruit. Take one business process, something that makes sense from start to finish, something that, you know, doesn't require a lot of human interaction. I really try to flush it out properly, because otherwise what ends up happening is you try to boil the ocean and you end up with, you know, a botched RPA project, not because of the RPA, but more because of the goals and what people were trying to actually achieve. Another thing is the challenge is if you base your RPA on a system that is constantly under maintenance, okay? So if your Oracle Form system changes on a daily basis, that might not be a great one to use for RPA, because again, RPA usually focuses on the front end, the screens of the project, and they don't really want to be dependent on something that's all the time changing, because that way you're going to have to constantly re-record the automation and fine-tune the automation. You want something that's kind of in maintenance mode that could run by itself and that could be tracked very easily. Another big challenge is the whole issue of character recognition. A lot of people, the main exciting portion of being able to do this automation is going to be able to read in PDF files of invoices or purchase orders, parse those files automatically, and then validate them against data from eBusiness Suite. So that's like the number one Oracle use case that we hear about. But there are a lot of challenges still with character recognition based on what type of characters, what type of file it is, and how to really gain that data. So, that's still a challenge that's being worked on. And the final challenge, of course, is that if you tell your employees that you're looking to bring in robotic process automation to make their workload easier and to remove repetitive tasks, etc., the first thing you'll hear from them is union, right? Or if you're not unionized, you'll hear, why are you changing my job? The robots are coming to take my job, etc., etc. So literally, there really has to be a clear understanding by the end users and by the organization to really let the end users know this is not coming in to, take anyone's job, remove anything. It's more coming in to help with the complexity and to be able to streamline the existing jobs for the people that currently work there, right? Not replacing, but making it a better, more productive work environment for them. In terms of best practices, like we said, we really need RPA to be at the center of the vision for the organization. So we don't want it to be that there's one automated process here and there, but really, how can we use RPA to plug into the other items in the organization and move it forward? Don't just automate a process to say it's been automated, right? There's tons of people who say, oh, Gartner told me that RPA is the next best thing, so we all have to do RPA now. That's not really the case, right? You really, the most important thing to do is to really start out with a good automation plan, understand what you would gain efficiency by automating, have a success plan, right? What type of things are going to be deemed a successful plan if they happen, right? What are the milestones you want to achieve with measurable milestones, right? We have customers who say, okay, Mia, we're saving 75 hours weekly in data entry because we now use this automated process, right? Mia, our process to insert a new customer went from 24 hours to 4 minutes because now we use automation, right? We want measurable successes to be able to understand and articulate this to management and to the team, right? And of course, it's very important also to really design out the team players, right? Who's going to be in charge of what with regard to the automation? Who's going to design the process? Who's going to develop or use the automation tool? And who's going to account for the debugging, the logging, error handling, etc. So where do we begin? The first thing, like we said, we kind of choose a suitable RPA product. As we mentioned, there are dozens of RPA solutions available nowadays in the mix. How you best go about doing it is essentially trying to understand what are you going to be automating, okay? If you're going to be automating cloud products, HTML-based products, Microsoft-based products, Oracle eBusiness Suite or Forms-based products, and then try to go for an approach that will do the best job of automating your specific needs, right? So we've worked with a lot of automation solutions because we specialize in Oracle Forms and e-business suite. So even when people purchase, UiPath or Automation Anywhere, they buy the Aura Player plugin to assist them to automate the EBS, the kind of complex, dynamic EBS system. The next thing we do is we choose a flow, whereas the flow could be any business process from the back office system. And what's good to do is to pick a flow that we could really show a business benefit, right? Show that we save money, gain money, become more effective, save time, right? And we create a flow chart of that business process and who's involved, right? Do we need human intervention? Do we need an attended RPA? Or could it be an unattended? It could be automatic. We want to track the movement of data between the steps, right? Do you need parameters to be passed between the different steps? Do you need error messages to be transferred? And then once you create that first automated process, you test and you scale up as you go. But again, there's no need to plan the huge RPA project and all the use cases in advance. The best way to begin is with a drip type situation where you do one RPA flow and you grow as you go. So some of the big RPA use cases that we've seen are, of course, in finance. There can be bank statement reconciliation, right? That you kind of read in your credit cards in an automated fashion and compare them to receipts that you received in Oracle e-business suite or iExpense. There's a lot of HR ones, payroll automation on a legacy system. For example, you might want to automate the insert of the time tracking from the clock where people check in and check out. Insurance, there's create customers, automated claims, creation of policies. For sales, there's price comparisons, price list data entry, promotions based on demand. So almost in every industry, as you can see, there's really a way to leverage this RPA to gain the benefits we discussed. So I think before we go into a kind of customer stories, I wanted to show a little bit of a demo. I think we have some time. We do. Okay, good. So I'm going to show actually a video demo. So then that way you guys could show it. Hold on, I'll show you. We'll do a video demo and that way you guys can look at it after the session as well. Okay, so this is basically a 3-part series where the first part we show how to create the service, how we automate the business flow of somebody working in e-business suite. Then we create the RPA flow, and then we will trigger and schedule the creation of the bot.
אני רוצה להראות לכם איך אתם יכולים תוך פחות מחודש להתחיל להרוויח ממכירה באיביי.
I'm going to show how to create a web service on top of e-business
So this is
to create
the Aura Player console, and the first thing we do is we go in
that supports Oracle Forms,
and we create
it's
a new service.
It could be IE, and I'll click on plus
in order
sign
to
and add
record
service.
the e-business
So let's
suite
do
process.
test,
So here, like we said,
sales
we would
order.
like to
That's
be able
the
to
name of
conduct
the
sales
service.
orders
And I'm going to
in an
paste
automated
the
fashion
URL of the form that
to
forms
get
this
an
action
Excel
that I want to
file
record.
by email.
I
And
will click
then
on begin,
have
and
that
now the
Excel
form
file
would be
automatically
opened.
update sales orders
Now, every field that
based
I would
on the
change
data
on the
in the
form
Excel.
would become input field to the
So
service that it
once
can
we
be
log into
parameterized
the
later on.
application, we
And
paste
if I
the
want to get the
URL of
response
e-business
as a field
suite,
or an output,
and
I'll just need
from
to
now
click on
on,
it and it
any
would
data
become
that's being
an
entered
output
into
field.
the e-business
So
suite
let's
system
enter my
will be
credentials.
parameters available as part of our automation. So
And
our any
click
input
enter.
parameters, like we just
Every
inputted
action that I perform
username,
on the screen
password,
would also be recorded.
any menu
like
items we
any
select,
button
any
press key, function
FTs we
keys,
select.
events would also be
Here
recorded.
we're going to be entering
So let me
customer
enter
information.
the
So
customer,
any data
tab
we
out, and
enter will
the
become
details
input
will be
parameters.
completed by the form.
And of course, all these
I will
input parameters
enter
will be dynamic, and they will be dynamically read by the
order
file
type, that's
as part of
standard.
the RPA bot.
And let's click on save.
So once
When
we
I click on
save
save, you'll
the
see
order
the message
information, we
before
see the
that
error message at the
transaction
bottom,
completed.
transaction
And
complete,
let's go to
one
order
record
lines
and
and
saved.
add a line
We then
to
go
that
to the
order.
line items. So we've
So
created
let me
one
get
sales order,
a valid
and now
item.
we are going
I'll
to
enter the item,
choose the
tab,
ordered items.
quantity,
What's the quantity,
tab,
the unit of
and
measure,
you can change the date
and the
or
request
not.
date. So any data that we
And
entered, as we said,
save.
become input
And
parameters.
again, I would expect
Then we
the
save
FIM 4400 transaction
the line
message
itself.
at the status bar.
And now when we go back to the
process
order,
is completed, and now
anywhere
I want to
we
get
click with the
output
mouse will
fields of
become
that
output
flow.
parameters.
And I'll go back
Meaning
to
that's
the
data
order and click
that will
on
be
the order
available
number. That's
to
something
the
that I want to get an
automation,
output,
to send
and
by
those
email,
fields as well.
to download to a
If I want to
file,
capture
or
all the
somehow
fields as
validate
output,
that
I
the
would click on capture
insert
parameters, but
has
it's not
completed
required in
correctly.
this case. I'll click on save and exit, and that would generate the service. Let's just see what we get. We get the service name, the URL of the form, the input fields, which are all the fields that I entered and can be parameterized, and the output fields are the fields that I clicked on and become output fields. Now, if I want to have also valid.
Let me just check this. No, but it doesn't have volume. Do you guys hear the volume in the background, or did you hear me? You can chat it. You hear both? Oh no.
We hear the video and you speaking over it.
Oh no. Well, but you see, there's nowhere to remove the volume. That's super weird. Is it low or is it loud?
Just a bit too low, maybe.
But here it says captions off. Blah, blah.
Mia, would you like me to share my screen and then you can walk through it?
Okay. This is so strange. Sorry about that, everybody.
No problem. It was doable, but would be easy maybe to.
We were just saying that there was no. We needed to have one tackle, right? Okay, great. So basically, once we save the service that we've created, go a little bit further back. Yeah. It brings us back to what we call the service manager. Elizabeth, we can go a little bit further back. Right. So here we have the service name we created, the forms URL, which we could change to be environment, test, or production. Here we see that it's captured the labels of the elements on the screen, like we said, the input parameters, username, password, request date, as well as the output parameters. Here we could also set if it's multi-record, meaning that we want many rows returned or just one row returned. And here we could also set validations, meaning it's not enough to just run the automation. We want to actually receive an error message or a failure if the response does not contain FRM 4400, meaning that the record has been applied and saved. So once we conduct the validations, we also want to check that the pop-up message does not have any error messages inside. And we then save this as the automation. The automation is available as a REST URL. It's also available as SOAP. You want to do integration, but you could also just click test and essentially here run the test where it goes to the EBS application, enters the order number, creates a new order, and you'll see here that the transaction is complete and the record has been applied and saved. But besides that ability, it also has the ability of being, as we said, completely dynamic. So we could essentially change the quantity to an error, right? The quantity has to be a number and we put S. And when we run a test, we will see legal characters are 0 to 9. So it's literally running Oracle e-business suite automated from this client side as we speak. So that for the first phase, we have now created this automated bot that is called create sales order. And now we're going to go to step 2, which will be to create the process flow. Because it's not enough to be able just to insert the record. We want to be able to read the sales orders from the Excel file. So right now that we finished the original automation, we are going to go back into the service manager, once again into the Oracle Service Manager, and we're going to click on the automation tab, and we're going to build the RPA flow. Here, essentially, it allows us to design out the process using a very easy, user-friendly flowchart diagrammer. So I'm going to name my process, right? Which is create sales order from file. And when I push plus, it allows me to enter either a service, which is what we just recorded. It could be JavaScript, it could be external services, which is SOA suite or API services. It could be to insert a file, it could be to send an email. We could loop over a file, or we could do any type of condition. Elizabeth, let's jump a little bit ahead here because I see we don't want to be too late. So here, essentially, we're going to have this Excel file of items, quantities, and dates. I've created a loop element in the flow chart, and I now choose the loop is of type CSV file, and I want to read into our service, add lines from the CSV file. When I choose the loop values, it essentially allows me to select from the Excel file and map out the rows from the file to the fields in the service that we just recorded, right? So we recorded date, quantity, and item. And now I'm going to be sending an email as part of the flow. I put the recipient address, the subject, I'm going to put the order number in the subject as well. And in the message, we're going to put the status bar messages. So that way we'll know if we get 4,400 or if there's any type of error message. Here I can click to actually test the results directly from our flowchart diagrammer. And we will see that it actually performs the execution. It created a new order number. And I can go into email and essentially see the same thing. So what we've actually done is taken that same service that knew how to create a sales order and line items, and we've extended it as part of an RPA process that reads from a file, sends an email, as well as does the final insert. And in this way, you could essentially take any type of business process. You could take price lists for insert. You could take data entry for inventory management, sub-inventory transfers, and all different ones. We have lots of examples from common use cases that we've done in the past. Thanks, Elizabeth, for being our screen sharer. I see them towards the end, so I'm just going to give a few interesting use cases. One of our customers is a major newspaper. It's the International Herald Tribune. And basically what they did is they reduced their call center overhead volume by allowing people to change their address, to request a vacation, to freeze on their paper for vacation, and to unfreeze their paper from vacation. And what essentially it does is they're all able to do that using the RPA automation directly from the customer portal. And they save 70% of their call volume by automating it that way. RPA was also used by Worthington Industries. They had to fill more than 50 new receipts per day that required manual validation. And they saved something like 75 hours weekly by doing it now using bots. And this is using UiPath for the automation and the OCR, the character recognition, and then or a player to insert everything into the eBusiness Suite application. So basically, like you saw, Oracle eBusiness Suite, of course, is a little bit of a complex application. It is working with an application that changes all the time, where patches are installed all the time, where version changes or UI is changed all the time. So that's really where, the plugin to allow you to automate these Oracle investments really shines. But for future investments, as we talked about a little bit already, most people are really interested in natural language processing, right? The chatbot elements. How could we use human language to interact with the applications and trigger these automations? Another one would be automatic business process and task discovery, right? Instead of us trying to figure out how to become more efficient, let machine learning and automation figure out where they could be the most efficient and help us out. So the things to consider before beginning your RPA project is basically a lot surrounding security, right? How will information and passwords be passed between systems? That's always a big one. Will RPA connect any current security mechanisms? So does it have to connect to Oracle eBusiness Suite application? If it's Oracle Forms, will it need to connect to identity stores in any case? What automation tool is right for the organization? What type of elements and what type of back office systems do you need to automate? also who's going to be able to do the functional analysis of the use cases, right? That's not something that's always done by IT. That's something that you need functional users, assistants to be able to do as well, and who could help with those types of things. Sorry, I got a little bit to the end of our session. I always get very excited by the demo portion and not leave enough time in the end, but I was told I can take an extra 5 minutes. But thank you so much for joining us. I am happy to discuss this with people further if this is of interest, because modernization really is my passion. I love to be able to show people and help people modernize their applications through these next generation technologies, as most people do, right? Most of the Oracle aces got to where they are because they love sharing their knowledge. So please let me know in the chat if you have any further questions. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you very much, Mia. Like I said at the beginning, it's something I'm always very interested in because we're using it extensively as well. Always good to hear other views and use cases on this. So one thing that came to my mind, and I'm not sure in what kind of volumes you're using it, but is that in the end, the cost of running those RPA bots can go up quite high if you have, like in our case, running a few hundreds, then that tends to become quite expensive. Any ideas or recommendations you may have for this?
Right. So that's basically what we were referring to. So if you're not automating Oracle-based backends, right, you probably don't get to those levels, right? Which is how, our product kind of like how our company kind of came to be as well, because when we saw that we started automating things like Oracle, all of a sudden you might need to automate 500 salespeople in the field, right? And to open a virtual client, 500 virtual clients in, UiPath or Automation Anywhere becomes, crazy endeavor. So the way that our solution operates is we don't actually open the Java client. We don't open the client side. We just create a session on WebLogic. So essentially, it's much quicker. It's like a few seconds where the session opens and closes, but it doesn't need as much, weight of opening, like you said, 500 clients on a virtual machine or something like that.